Greetings, Guardians. My name is Bife here. I'm recording this at about 1 AM the night before I'm heading off to GCX, so this is a non-scripted, much more abbreviated recording, but I'm using this time to go over the weekly story, which I played through and finished just moments ago. Wow, I really don't know where to even start with this. I think that there is a point at which you can sit there and that writing for anything is good, and then you get to that point where it's so uncomfortably accurate that it's masterful, and yet at the same time you really don't want to understand the place it's come from. This isn't a criticism, this is more sort of reflection. I think that the heartstrings that are being tugged on for the last Sever mission in particular are, they must come from somewhere personal, and whoever wrote this, if they do come from somewhere personal, I hope you have closure. I hope that writing this brought you some of it, if you didn't have it already, because it's so accurate, it's painfully so, and I was not ready for that. I don't know if anyone was ready for that today. So, be warned, this is a yeah, this week's story is quite something. It involves Commander Zavala, it involves his past, and it involves grief and guilt and an inability to forgive oneself. That hits home incredibly hard. I think this may be one of the most impactful moments in the story that I've seen in Destiny ever. And that's saying something, because there have been many amazing moments, especially in the last few years. You know, whether that was Crow having the revelation with Savathun that he was indeed the reincarnation of Uldren Sov, or whether that was the moment when Saladin walks in on Crow having murdered that poor Scion, or, you know, whether it's Mithrax recounting the story of the demon that was Saint 14. All of these amazing story moments, they've done some masterful storytelling around really complex topics, but for Bungie to take that writing that has become one of the sharpest weapons in their arsenal as far as being able to leverage the game to do something incredible is concerned, they've now taken that and they've made it very personal in a way that it's bound to be uncomfortable, but I'm glad for. Glad for, because I feel like this is also something that's allowing everyone to sit there and just sort of say, hey, you know, this is the very real thing that none of us want to talk about, that is trauma, but also it's something that genuinely does represent masterful writing. So, yeah, bravo Bungie, and without much more being said, let's start talking about the story this season, and what was going on this week. The story rotates, of course, around Zavala and his need to sever his nightmare, Sophia, who is his former wife. And this takes us to a place that I really didn't anticipate it would. It's partly this way because I think I anticipated and understood what it was going to be like to see Zavala suffering at the grief of his dead wife. We all assumed and knew that Sophia was dead, but I don't think that anyone quite anticipated the nature of this particular fight. I don't think anyone really understood what Zavala was dealing with. So, it starts as per usual. You need to bind an essence and a presence in order to successfully conduct the Sever mission, and so as a result you need to go and do your nightmare containment. But when you start that Sever mission, it really begins. And I'm just going to let Martin roll the different moments from this up until the point at which Zavala and Sophia have their first big conversation, because it gives us a little bit of an introduction.
The second severance is at hand. We proceed as you wish, Commander. But whatever you hear, you must press forward.
Understood. Thank you, Eris.
Set your amplifiers. Sever Callus's connection. And tread carefully.
I see your new protege, Zavala. I wonder, have you told them what became of the last warrior you trained?
Amplifier online. I'm detecting the commanders as well. As we learned with Crow, these devices will help, but our success hinges on resolving Zavala's inner demons.
Guardian, How can you trust Zavala when he keeps secret the life he led before the city? I knew him before he was your commander. When he was young and boastful, we used to sit together, listening to the cicadas. He listens to them sometimes still.
They remind me of what I lost.
Focus, Zavala.
I am.
Why do you leave our names unspoken? Do the memories of the time pain you so much?
Iodine, come in.
We are with you.
I was ambushed by Scorn and a horror I couldn't bring down. I couldn't reach you.
He is shaken. Zavala, tell them you are afraid. Confide in them. Why hide your feelings?
It doesn't matter how I feel.
That is why you will fail. You put your duty before your heart.
The phantoms trapped in this fetid hull sustain something that is growing. Zavala's nightmare is a part of it, but each amplifier further isolates her presence from Callus's hold.
Stay with me a little longer. Life moved on around us, but we can wait here for a moment.
You chose to move when you could have stayed.
Safi,
Don't. You have made your choice.
Go on ahead. I'll find my own way.
You'll notice here that I was about to move on, and then in the gameplay, I turned around and took a look back, and I wondered if Zavala was doing anything. I've not felt concern for a character quite like that in a while. The next major thing that happens is the big dialogue between Zavala and Sophia, and it's something that is totally revealing by the end of it. Something that gives you a clue as to the degree of guilt and grief that Zavala holds with him. Take a listen to this, and then we will return when the mission is done.
The brave Zavala holds his offering in clenched fingers, afraid to lose the pain he has kept close for so long.
It's all I have left.
You hoard our memory like a starving animal hoards bones, and call that reverence.
I mourned. I begged for your forgiveness. What more can I do?
Speak our names. Release us. You say you mourned our deaths, Zavala. Stood at our graves, cried out in prayer to your traveler.
For a long time.
What good did it do? No ghosts found us. Instead, the traveler gave the light to your enemies.
It's not that simple.
It is that simple. That abandoner deserves your duty more than me, more than our son. It is why you left us both to die alone.
Don't use him like that. I chose you. I tried to give it away.
You killed him, as much as the Fallen did. You wove your gallantry into his bones. My son's killers should meet.
He still carries blame. We cannot proceed until he finds forgiveness.
Forgiveness? You shared meals with Fallen behind your walls, after what they took. This new life dishonors your old one. It dishonors your son.
Hakim.
Your true family wouldn't torment you. This is your grief, Zavala.
My husband is not a liar, and I am speaking his words. He knows what he is.
A hollow man leading others to die. For a
silent god.
Enough. Guardian, bring the commander back before any more damage is done.
Zavala didn't just lose his wife. He lost his wife because he lost his son, and because they agreed to go back to the lives that they'd led before. He found happiness, truly understood it, and truly embraced it, and then it was snatched away from him. And that grief is something that is far greater than simply two people. And I think it's worth watching the cutscene and the dialogue from Eris in the Helm that follows this in order to truly understand why. So here's Eris introducing the cutscene and the cutscene itself.
Zavala will not speak to you of his regrets, but I will not let him bear them alone. Here, listen closely. Whispers and confessions as I have heard them. He would tell it differently, but memory clings so loosely to the truth. I will share what I know. Before the Vanguard, before the city, there was a woman. Her name was Sophia, and she was a surgeon. She came to Lord Saladin's gates, offering her skills in exchange for shelter. Zavala was his protege then. He had been taught his purpose, and he followed it without question. She maddened him. He infuriated her. But respect grew to admiration, and admiration to love. Does it surprise you that Zavala loved? She was meticulous and gentle, strong-willed, stubborn, fearless. It began with an infant, orphaned in a fallen raid. Saladin had taught Zavala duty, war, and the light. But Sophia showed him that he was more than an instrument of violence. She had one life, and she would share it with him. They called the boy Hakim. And he called Zavala father. In his joy, Zavala thought to abandon the light, as he had abandoned Saladin's ways. That joy ended as it began, with their son. When Hakim followed his father into battle, Zavala could not protect him, and Sophia could not save him. Hakim died in his mother's arms. Zavala wanted her forgiveness, but she knew there was nothing to forgive. And that giving up the light would be no absolution for him. They returned to the lives they once led. She found love again. She had a daughter. And when Sophia passed, he asked her to forgive him. Through each generation, he mourned. He asked for their forgiveness. And still, he has not found it.
We talk sometimes about generational trauma that is passed from one generation to another. This, I think, is a very different and truly unique form of that, because it's generational trauma that is passed from all the different dying and dead descendants to one person who is still alive. Zavala has not just grieved for Sophia and Hakim, but also for every single family member that has died, every single one of them who he has asked forgiveness from. And he still doesn't feel like he has it. He still blames himself. He still feels guilt. it's impossible, seemingly, for him to forgive himself, and that's a very real place for a lot of us. Guilt and shame and the ability or inability of one to truly grapple with one's feelings is something that I think a lot of us understand. It's something that is totally human. When you sit there late at night and you remember something that you might have done years ago that in the grand scheme of things is insignificant, but ultimately makes you sit and feel nothing but regret and guilt. Where you sit and you think to your less perfect moments that absolutely haunt you. Not all of us have one that is as terribly shocking as Zavala's, and it is one where he sits there and he sees his personal responsibility as the real reason for him bearing his burdens, but it's a very human reaction, I think. I'm uncomfortable to an extent sitting here and talking about this, but I'm uncomfortable only because of how real that is. And again, I think that it's important to go through that because next week we will see forgiveness, and if tears were being shed this week, I imagine that there will be a few more next week. Ultimately, Eris does touch on this point of forgiveness at the Crown of Sorrow, and it's something really important that she says that I want to draw your attention to. Listen in particular to what she says about friends and family.
Zavala's wounds run deeper than he allows us to see. The lengths he has gone to cut himself off from his heart is familiar. It is through accepting what we cannot change where we find the strength to move forward. We grieve, we move, and we grow. Zavala only knows grief. But perhaps there is hope in others, in the council of friends and family. There is no running from his truth any longer. The past is laid bare, and so too the commander's heart. Resume your patrols aboard the Leviathan Guardian, and I will see what can be done elsewhere.
Zavala has always, to an extent, acted and sort of been alone. Zavala, in one way, is truly a singular titan. No one else understands his burden. No one else can truly know the great responsibility on his shoulders. And he bears that burden alone, I think, by choice. And it's not something that he's willing to hand over to others. It's oftentimes one where he is burdened by the responsibility and actively carries it. Maybe he sees it as penance. Maybe he sees it as necessary. Maybe he understands to an extent that his duty is to ensure that others can survive where he failed to protect them previously. Regardless, he shouldn't need to feel any of this alone. He should be able to share that burden with friends. And that's where the story really starts to wind down, which is with this conversation between him and Amanda Holliday, the shipwright, who, if you've seen my video about her and Crow, you should definitely go and look at that. She's also been going through a tough time. It's really also quite uncanny where they describe the degree to which everyone is on edge. Little things setting Amanda off, as she says, is something that I definitely understand, and I'm sure at least a few of you do too. Take a listen to this. It's important.
Hey, Commander. How you holding up?
I've been better. Sounds like you have too.
Yeah. Pretty tore up inside. Any little thing sets me off. Might have said some hurtful stuff to somebody who didn't deserve it.
We've all been at our worst. When we're hurt, when we're afraid. We all fall apart.
Feels like I'm held together by duct tape and spit lately.
The last few weeks have opened up some old wounds. Reminded me of important people I've lost. My wife. My son.
Yeah. I know that kind of hurt. Other way around, though. I still think about my folks, but I can't really remember their voices anymore.
I can't remember Hakeem's voice either. I try
me about him? Your wife?
Someday. Not today. Not yet.
Want some company down in your office anyway? We don't have to talk. Maybe we just sit.
I'd like that. Thank you, Amanda.
Ain't nothing. It's what family does.
So there you have it. Zavala had a son. And a wife. And more people that he mourned. Generations of trauma that has been piled on his shoulders, guilt and grief that has built up for so long that he has been unable to forgive himself for, even though there was nothing to forgive. So that's our story in Destiny this week. I don't know what more to say. It's a real testament to the writing of Bungie, and I do hope that next week we get to see something more out of this story that really lends to a further part of this. I wonder what will happen. I wonder whether Amanda is going to bring Zavala back into the fold and remind him that, hey, everything's okay. I wonder if maybe Eris and Ikora and Keitel stand by Zavala and remind him that he doesn't need to bear these burdens alone. It's been clear that the stress has been building up for him over the last few seasons for a very long time. You could even hear him in the Season of the Risen falling asleep at the wheel as he was commanding the various different psyops. This is one of those moments where all of that stress and trauma needs to be released. It needs to be forgiven, but it can't be forgiven by Zavala alone. Yes, the ultimate decision and the choice needs to be his, but he does need friends to get him there. I think it's going to be a bit odd, but I think I want to say thank you for the story this week, Bungie. This is quite something. Gifts are strange, and they come in really odd forms, and I don't quite know how to feel about this one, but I feel that when partnered with Forgiveness, which is supposed to be next week's Sever mission according to the triumphs that you can see publicly in-game, we should have something really remarkable. There have been times when I really didn't appreciate Commander Zavala's story. I think now I do. Beyond what I used to, and that's really saying something. So, again, thank you to the incredible writers, and thank you to the incredible voice actors who brought all of this to life. Seriously, the entire story has been elevated by all of your work. I'm just stunned. I'm totally blown away. I'll have a lore video at some point on who Sophia was and her story. For now, though, that's going to be all from me. My name is Bife. If you enjoyed this video or found that it was something you wanted to reflect on, leave that thought down below in the comments section too. Please go ahead and let me know how you guys are feeling. Also, if you want more Destiny content that apparently is now going to tear at your heartstrings, yeah, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe. I'm staying with this story, and you should too. It's a really exciting time to be in Destiny's story and to understand it and to do things week by week. So yeah, definitely exciting. Anyway, as per usual, know that your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Per audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.